Welcome all. Now today after discussing about the CMOS inverter, its analysis and how the noise margin of the CMOS inverter will be extracted and what is the significance of that noise margin. Now the next parameter, the design parameter, which is very important to be considered, that is the power dissipation, or we call it also a power consumption. And in this lecture, we will be discussing about the power dissipation in the CMOS inverter. And we also discuss about that how many types of power dissipation is there and what are the responsible sources in the circuit which cause the power dissipation. So firstly, we should understand this thing why power is chosen as a main design constraint. So there are two reasons about that. First is that we are now using mostly a battery operated devices, means we have switched ourselves to a portable world, and once the battery operated devices are being used, then obviously power is of a main concern because they should have a reasonable lifetime, their limited weight, we cannot make them big heavy. So the battery which is over there, that should also be of a lightweight, but it should have a backup, more backup time. Its charging time should be less and discharging time should be as high as possible. And these type of devices which we are using nowadays, they are now a part of our life, like we are using cell phones, the multimedia terminals, laptops, and wireless sensors are being used in many of the applications. So we cannot get rid of these gadgets now. So they so it is a very big concern to have a control on the power. And for controlling the power, one should understand that what are the ways to estimate it and what are the parameters on which it is dependent upon. Next, if we are talking of a system design consideration, then the high performance applications. We all are working with the high performance application because all the appliances, or we can say the gadgets which we are using, the mobile phones, the laptops, they all are of a high end. And the power delivery and heat removal becomes an issue for such kind of a system because it increases the package costing also. It questions on the reliability of the product also. And if there are on chip hotspots, then they degrade the performance of the chip also. On chip hotspots means if there is some module in a chip which is consuming or dissipating a very high power, so that becomes a problem for the overall performance. Why so? Because the chip is fabricated with the semiconductor. The all devices which are on the chip, they are the semiconductor and the conducting devices. And with the uh, heat dissipation, or we can say with the power dissipation, their lifetime reduces, and slowly the erroneous output may be generated out of that system. So these are few concerns by why we today we have chosen this power dissipation topic to be discussed in a detail. Now further, we will see that how many types of power dissipation is there into a CMOS. So moving towards the type of power dissipation in a CMOS circuit, the power dissipation or the power consumption, it is categorized into a three parts: dynamic power, static power, and short circuit power. So dynamic power is it is due to the switching current which is required to charge or discharge the output loads. Or in another way, we can say that if we have a capacitive load in the circuit, so the dynamic power will depend upon the charging and discharging of that capacitive load. So it is totally dependent upon the switching activity or the switching current. Static power, this is mainly due to the leakage sources in the transistors. And as we have scaled down the devices so far, so this static power, or we can say the leakage sources, are of a big concern because it is a drawback of a scaling also, that if we scale the device to a maximum extent or to a one level, then the leakage increases because of the miniaturization or shrinking of the dimensions of the transistor. And this leakage includes the subthreshold conduction also, which is between the source and drain, and the reverse bias PN junction leakage. And there are few more factors which I will be discussing in the further lecture, that there are nearly 4 to 5 main leakage sources into the transistor, and we should need to take care of that. They should be minimized as much as possible so that the static power dissipation will be at its minimum extent. Secondly, static power dissipation is also because of the biasing circuitries in the case of analog circuits or the analog systems. Third comes here the short circuit power dissipation. This is a power dissipation which is present into the CMOS circuit when there is a time of a switching, means when input signal is switching from either high to low level or low to high level, and in between there comes a instance of time where pull up and pull down network, means the P network and the N network both get simultaneously on, and a direct path from a VDD to ground will be established, and due to that this short circuit power dissipation comes into picture. So these are the three categories. Total, we say that the total power dissipation into the CMOS circuit is the summation of these three, where it is a dynamic power dissipation plus short circuit and plus a static power dissipation. So this is how we find out the total power dissipation. Now going one by one to each and every in detail. So first comes the dynamic power dissipation. Now if I talk of a dynamic power dissipation, see this is a CMOS inverter, and here I am taking a capacitive load or a capacitor as a load. Now there will be two cycles depending upon the input. If input is moving from low to high, or suppose if I'll say if input is 0, say when input is 0, this PMOS will be on and this will be off. It means if PMOS is on, this Vout will be charged completely with the VDD voltage. Or in a other way, we can say that this output node will make a transition from 0 to VDD. And at that time, the amount of energy from the power supply is dissipated in the form of a heat in this conducting PMOS transistor. Now the second case comes when I assume that Vin is 1 or high. If Vin is high, then this PMOS will be off, and now this pull down network, which is a NMOS transistor, this will get on. And one thing more, during the charging phase, this capacitor was charged by the VDD. Now in the discharging phase, when the NMOS is conducting, then this the Vout terminal is connected to the ground. It means whatever be the charge previously stored on this capacitor, this is slowly going to be discharged. And in this case, the power supply, there will be no power drawn from the power supply because this PMOS is off. So there is no connection between the power supply and the output voltage. So this is how this dynamic power dissipation is divided into two phases. Now moving further, if we will be looking for like what will be the energy taken from the supply during the transition, that will be given by the integration from 0 to infinite and PVDD. Suppose PVDD is the power of this supply voltage source, and this is a time dependent, or this can also be written as I into V. So IVDD, if the IVDD is the power current which is drawn from this supply voltage, and the VDD. So or this can also be written in a form of capacitance. So we can also write it as CL dV out by dt. So now placing these limits, we will be getting here CL into VDD square. So this is the energy which is taken from the supply during the transition. Now if I'll say that the energy, suppose EC is that energy which is stored in the capacitor at the end of the transition, in this capacitor suppose, then this will be given by again 0 to infinite limits will be there, I into V, where V is this V out node because we are looking at the load terminal, and this will be again written as CL dV out by dt, and now we have 0 to VDD transition again. So this will be given as half CL VDD square. So what this implies basically? This implies that half of the energy supplied by the power source is stored in the load capacitance and the other half is being dissipated by the PMOS device. So, and one thing to remember over here, the energy dissipation is independent of the size of the PMOS transistor. It does not depend upon the aspect ratio of the PMOS. And during the discharge phase, the charge is removed from the capacitor because NMOS is conducting and the path from V out to ground is being established and its energy is dissipated into the NMOS device. So if we talk of each switching cycle, it takes a fixed amount of energy which is equal to CL into VDD square. And suppose if a gate is switched means if it is on and off Fn times per second. Fn is that number which we are taking that a gate is switched per second by Fn time. So then your dynamic power dissipation can be noted as CL into VDD square into F, or I have just written here F, it may be Fn also, you can write it over here. Where this Fn is basically the frequency of energy consuming transitions. This is also known as a switching activity, means how many times the node is switching. Switching means how many times the node is changing its value from low to high or high to low. So in general, we give the dynamic power dissipation as capacitive load or the C load into VDD square into F, where F is the maximum switching activity possible and we also say it as a clock rate. Now, this is also a case that output does not switch in every cycle. It may be happen and this is actually true also. It is not possible or it is not always a always a case that when output will switch in each and every clock cycle. So there may be that output does not switch in every cycle. So what we do, we scale the power by the probability of transition which is given by alpha, and this alpha is a probability based value. So the dynamic power dissipation have a more accurate formula to be given as alpha CL VDD square into F, where alpha is the probability or it is known as a switching factor. CL is the load capacitance, VDD is the supply voltage and F is the clock frequency. So this is how we calculate the dynamic power dissipation. Now we discuss about the static power dissipation. Now if we talk of a static power dissipation, as we have just discussed back in the earlier slides, that static power is due to the leakage source in the transistors. So now how many type of leakage sources will be there? There are many types of leakage source which are present into the MOSFET. Few are very dominant or we can say very prominent, which cause the static power dissipation in the CMOS devices. One is a reverse bias junction leakage current, which is between the source or drain drain with the substrate junction. So there is a reverse bias junction leakage current. Then we have a gate induced drain leakage, which is over here between the gate and drain. Then we have a gate direct tunneling leakage, which is responsible with the gate only. Means that there will be a tunneling between the gate and the channel or gate and substrate. And last is the subthreshold leakage, which is due to the weak inversion state of the transistor. Means when transistor is conducting in a weak inversion, then we have a subthreshold leakage. So now one by one, we will go into detail of these leakage current. So firstly talking about the reverse bias junction leakage current. Now see what is happening. This is a CMOS inverter structure. This mode is basically well over here. Some write it as a mode, some denote it as a well. Now what happens in this? Parasitic diodes formed between these diffusion areas and the substrate. Like this is a p-type source and a p-type drain and the well is of n-type. So there will be a junction formed. And we can say a diode structure is formed. Basically, p-n junction diode will be formed. Similarly over here with the n diffusion areas and p-type substrate. And when these are reverse bias because of the voltage applied on this, then this reverse bias junction leakage current comes into picture. Here I have taken a one example. Say in the case of a CMOS inverter, when input is high, then NMOS transistor will be on and it will generate a low output. So now if we talk between the drain and the N well, a reverse potential of VDD is established. Means if I talk of this, that this drain is connected to VDD and over here. So the N well region of the PMOS transistor with respect to the P-type substrate, that is reverse bias. See here the N well is also charged with the or connected with the VDD. So this will have a reverse biasing over here, and this will also lead to the leakage current. So whenever these junctions will be reverse biased because of some applied voltage, we have a reverse bias junction leakage current. The phenomena is same as we have studied in the PN junction diode, that if the junction is going to be reverse biased, then there will be a more amount of a leakage current present. Next, we have a gate-induced drain leakage, which is known as a GIDL. This GIDL is caused by high field effect in the drain junction of transistor. Note it down, drain junction of transistor, not the source. That's why it is known as a gate-induced drain leakage. Now, for an NMOS transistor with a grounded gate and drain potential at VDD, means if suppose this is an NMOS transistor, if we have gate ground, means gate will be biased at a zero potential and drain is having a VDD, it is connected to VDD, then what will happen? There will be a bending in the drain which will allow electron hole pair generation. Why? Because of the high voltage connected over here, and that is through the avalanche multiplication or the bend to bend tunneling. And because of this, a deep depletion condition is created because this is a heavily reverse bias now. Now what will happen at the same time when this is a deep depletion region is being created, then the electrons are collected by the drain resulting in a GIDL current. So how the electrons will be collected by a drain? Because it has a high potential over here, so they will feel an attraction force. So they will be collected by a drain and hence it results into a leakage current which is known as a gate induced drain leakage. Why gate induced? Because gate is at a zero potential, it is not having some potential which is more than threshold voltage. Basically this is happening when device is supposed to be in a off condition, so the gate voltage is capped below the threshold voltage and there will be a leakage current which will be flowing because of the high drain voltage. And this mechanism, leakage mechanism, it becomes worst when we have a high drain to body voltage and high drain to gate voltage. Means when VGD will be very high and when VDB will be very high, then this leakage will be at its maximum. Now coming to the next, that is a gate direct tunneling leakage. So now when we are talking of a gate direct tunneling leakage, this is basically as the transistor length and supply voltage, we are scaling them, means we are shrinking the transistor length and we are also reducing the supply voltage as the effect of the scaling. What happens to the gate oxide? Its thickness also reduced. This thickness of the gate oxide, this also reduced. And if this is being reduced, then it means why this is happening? So that this gate will have a better control over this channel region. And what happens due to this? This results in an exponential increase in the gate leakage due to the direct tunneling through the gate oxide. Means when the gate oxide will be very thin, then what will happen? Due to the high electric field generated over here, the charge carriers will directly tunnel towards here, towards gate from the channel region. That's why it is known as a gate direct tunneling leakage. And why they can direct tunnel? Because now the oxide thickness is very less. So that much of energy the electron will gain and it can tunnel through, or due to some defects which are present in the oxide, because of that also the electron can tunnel through the insulating or the oxide layer towards the gate, which is a reverse type of a current basically. And this tunneling, it is predominant for the sub 65 nanometer technology. Means when we are moving down the 65 nanometer technology, then this gate direct tunneling leakage, this is of a high importance and it has a high dominance also. Now next we have the sub-threshold leakage. This is very important to be understand. What is the sub-threshold leakage? This is basically, it is a drain source current of a transistor when the transistor is in a weak inversion region. Now what is a weak inversion region? It is the region when gate voltage is less than the threshold voltage and suppose we have a high drain voltage. In this case I have taken this as equal to VDD. Now what will happen? This gate voltage is not sufficient to form a channel over here, but because of the high drain voltage, a very high electric field, the horizontal or the lateral electric field develop, and that electric field is so high that it starts the conduction of the current from drain to source, and that is known as a sub-threshold current. Because this region, the weak inversion region, that is known as a sub-threshold conduction region. So basically device is off but still the conduction is happening. One case I have noted here also. So if we talk of an inverter, when input is 0 to the inverter, it means NMOS is turned off and Vout will be 1 because PMOS will be off when input is 0. Now in this case, although we have gate voltage VGS 0 volt, there is still a current flowing into the NMOS transistor due to the VDD potential over here, which will generate a very high electric field. And this was not the problem with the long channel devices. Why? Because this distance between source and drain was so large that this electric field which is generated due to the supply voltage, that was not sufficient to pull the electrons from source to drain. But now as we have scaled down the devices, the gap between source and drain is reduced. So now that electric field is sufficient to pull the electrons from source to drain and the current conduction takes place. And the sub-threshold current, it is a function of temperature, supply voltage, device size, the process parameters, out of which the threshold voltage plays a very important role. See over here, this sub-threshold current basically, this is having a relationship with the VGS, and VGS is what? The minimum VGS which is required to establish a channel over here, that is known as a VTH. So if it has a relationship with the gate to source voltage, it means it is also depending upon the threshold voltage, and the sub-threshold leakage increases exponentially with the decrease in threshold voltage. So this is again a very big concern for the scaling also, that if the scaling says that low to scale down the threshold voltage, then the subthreshold leakage of the device will exponentially increase. So this is also to be taken care of. So these are the main leakage current sources due to which the static power dissipation takes place into the device. Now next is the short circuit power dissipation. Short circuit power dissipation basically occurs when we have some non-zero or finite rise and fall time into the signal. So then what happens if it is having a ramp type of a shape, means transition is taking some time, then in between this PMOS and NMOS both will be on. And when these both get on, then there is a direct path established from VDD to ground. So this is a kind of a short circuit condition which occurs. So that's why this is known as a short circuit power dissipation. So now after discussing the static power dissipation and dynamic power dissipation in the CMOS inverter circuit, we will now come to the third element of the power dissipation, that is known as a short circuit power dissipation. Now this short circuit power dissipation takes place into the CMOS circuit when there is a direct path between VDD and ground. And this is only possible when for a time, suppose pull up and pull down, both type of networks are on. And then only this path will be completed from VDD to ground, and this is known as a short circuit power dissipation because there is a short circuit which occurs between the supply voltage and the ground terminal. Now here I am taking a case of a CMOS inverter, and
uh, input is shown over here, and this input has a finite rise and fall time. This is not a step type of an input. We are not considering this type of an input over here with where it has a step or a sudden rise and fall, but we are considering here a circuit which has a finite or some particular rise and fall time, and this is true for the particular real applications also, or we can say the practical applications too, because there is no signal which can rise or fall in a zero time. Zero time means a perfect step signal. No, there will not be. I cannot say that at the t time the value of this signal is 0 and again at the time t the value of this signal is 1. If suppose this is 1 and 0. Similarly over here, if it is a step, it is taking no time in coming down, the transition time of this signal is 0, then suppose at a time t1, somebody will say ki no, this signal is acquiring a 1 value, and some will say that this signal is acquiring a 0 value, which cannot be practically true. So there is always a time between the transition of the signal. So in actually the signal seems to be like this, where it has some finite time to rise from 0 to 1 value, and it also takes some finite time to drop from 1 to 0 value, and that is shown over here in the waveform. Now suppose this is some input signal. I am taking its that value where it is rising and acquiring a high value. It means during this time when the input is rising and it is acquiring a high value, so this PMOS will get on for a certain time, and this complete one cycle I denote it by T. Now I have marked some marks at the input waveform. Suppose at this level, this is a level which is equal to the threshold voltage of the NMOS device. This is half of the VDD. This is a level where the input signal acquires VDD minus VTN value, and this is 100% of the or maximum of the signal, which is equal to VDD. The rise time of this signal is tau R, and the fall time of the signal is noted as tau F. So this is a rise time and this is a fall time. Now under this I have drawn a current behavior of this inverter, and this is drawn under the consideration that we are not using any external load to this behavior, this inverter. We are not considering any load over here. So this is basically a current behavior of the MOSFET under no load condition or without load. Now if I will see this, then when the signal will come to VDD by 2, the maximum current will flow at this time. A type of a spikes will be over here, and these spikes will start rising from VTN. VTN is that minimum voltage where the NMOS will get on. Before that the NMOS will not be on, and when the signal arises to VDD, half of the VDD, or it's acquired the 50% of its maximum value, then the current will be maximum, and after that it starts decreasing. Similar type of a current profile will be shown during the fall time. Now if this is a behavior for the further calculation or the derivation of a short circuit power dissipation, I'll consider that this is a symmetrical inverter. This is a symmetrical inverter, and this symmetricity says that the transconductance parameter of NMOS and PMOS, that will be equal. This is a first condition of the symmetrical inverter, and I also take that the threshold voltage of the two devices is equal, and I name it as VT. And suppose the rise and fall time is also equal, means I have a very periodic signal over here. This is equal to tau, where it will take the same time for the rising and as well as for the falling. So these are very important considerations which we will be taking. And another consideration which we will take for the further calculation is that this NMOS, when it is getting on at Vin equals to Vtn, it is moving into a saturation region. I'll take this. So these are some assumptions or the considerations which I will be carried out. First, and one thing also to be noted, because we are taking that, see, this is rising from VTN, making a high peak or the maximum value at VDD by 2, and this is the VDD minus VTN. It means we can also assume here that T1 is equal to T2 and it is equal to T3. So these gaps are equal. In a similar fashion, these are also equal. These are some, we can say some assumptions which we are taking for the calculate to make the analysis a bit simpler. So now if I am doing so, and if I have to calculate the total current, then what I have to do, rather than calculating for these four regions, means from T1 to T2, then I have to take from T2 to T3, then I have to calculate for T4 to T5, and similarly for T5 to T6, and then I have to add all the four. So if these all are equal, then what I have to do, I will calculate for T1 to T2 and 4 times of that. So that will be my total current. And the short circuit power dissipation, this is given as mean current into the supply voltage. So our total focus is on how to calculate the mean current, what will be the value of mean current, because we know the value of this drain to source current which is flowing into this inverter, we know that, but we don't know that what will be the exact expression or value for the mean current. So we have to find out this mean current over here, and for finding the mean current, further we will start a derivation, and these are some assumptions which we have to take in care while deriving the mean current equation. So I am rubbing this. Now as we have considered that NMOS is driven into a saturation, so the saturation current equation for the NMOS will be written as this, where this K is the transconductance parameter and it is equal to mu n C oxide W by L. VGS is equal to V in the case of a CMOS inverter, and VT we are taking the threshold voltage. So this is how we can write, and here this I is having a range from, this is true for I equal to or less than I max and greater than or equal to 0. Now if I have to write the mean current, I mean is a current which is which can be written as, say, 2 by T integration of this is how we can represent the mean current. Why twice I am taking? Because one towards the rise and other towards the fall. So we have T1 to T2 and T2 to T3. We have those two periods, and then T4 to T5 and T5 to T6. So I am taking it like this. I of T is basically this current which is indicating over here. So it can be rewritten as, and T is the time period of a one cycle of input signal, that is T. So this will be 4 by T, T1 to T2. Now I1 will be replaced by this equation K by 2 V in minus Vt whole square into dt. Okay, so this is how we can write this. Now we have to solve this, but for solving this we should know these limits, that what we will be replacing at a place of T1 and T2, because this is not known to us, that what is the exact time of T1 and T2. So to finding out this, what we will assume, that there is a linear relationship between input voltage and the time of the signal. So considering that linear relationship between the input voltage and the time, I can plot it like this. Say this is T, this is V in. So if it has a linear relationship, so obviously a line equation will be drawn, and we have just seen for the rise time. If this is the time which is equal to the tau r, which is the rise time, at this time input value was VDD. This is the maximum, and in between we have certain periods like at VTN it was acquiring T1, this is at VDD by 2, this was the T3, this was at VDD minus VTN. This is what we have just drawn earlier in the waveform which we have seen for the input signal and the current with respect to the input signal. So now if I consider this line relationship between the time and the input voltage, so by the means of a line equation which says that y is equal to mx, so our y is over here v in, yes, x is time t, and this this tau r we are taking it as equal to tau, and m will have a value vdd upon tau into t. So this is representing the y, this is representing the x, and this is m. This is the slope of this line, vdd by tau, the maximum slope. Now we have to place that when t is equal to t1, because we have to find out the limits for t1 and t2. So when t is equal to t1, then what this value will be, and when t is equal to t2, then what this value will change like. So we have to do for that. So I'll write it over here. It will be clearly shown there. So we have just written that V in equals to VDD upon tau into T. Now for T equals to T1, if I am taking for T equals to T1, at that time V in is equal to VTN. So my equation will be changed as T1 equals to, here T1 will be, T will be V in into tau upon VDD. So this will be VTN into tau, or we can say, sorry, VT, because we are taking it as VTN equals to mod of VTP equals to VT. So I will take VT over here, VT upon tau into VDD. What I have done over here, I have taken this T on a one side, rest all the figures on other side. So this will be written as V in into tau upon VDD. And in this expression, I am placing T equals to T1, and when T is equal to T1, input is acquiring a value equals to threshold voltage. So V in is equal to VT at that time. So we are getting this T1 as a function of voltage and the time. Now for similarly we can find out for T equals to T2. Now when T is equal to T2, the input signal value is equal to VDD by 2. So this will be written as V in equals to VDD by 2. And now again we will place this into this equation. So T will be replaced by T2 and V in is VDD by 2 upon VDD into tau. So this will be written as tau. So now we are known with the limits also. Now we can integrate the equation, the mean current equation, and then we can find out the expression for the short circuit power dissipation. So now I am moving further and keeping these limits into mind. I will do the integration of the mean current now. So again rewriting the equation of mean current which I have just written, it was 4 by T, T1 to T2, K by 2, V in minus VT whole square into dt, right? So now when I am placing the limits and taking this constant outside, so this will be k twice k by t. If I am taking k by 2 outside, placing the limits, the t1 we have extracted it as tau by 2, sorry, t1 was, yes, t1 will be here, this is your t1 to t2. So placing here the limits of t1 and t2, and in the place of v in, we will write here vdd by tau into t, which we have find out from the linear equation, line equation, sorry. So after integrating this, we will be getting 1 by 12 k upon vdd into tau upon t v in vdd minus 2 vt q. So when you will be integrating this equation and placing the limits into the equation, you will be getting the I mean as this. Now if the mean current equation is extracted or derived, then it is very easy to finalize the short circuit power dissipation. So now what we will be doing over here, we will take this short circuit power dissipation as I mean into VDD, and placing this equation over here, this VDD and VDD will cancel out and it will be K by 12 tau by T VDD minus twice VTQ. So this is how the short circuit power dissipation can be estimated. So basically this T, if I invert it, it is a time period of an input signal. So if I inverted the frequency, it will be noted down as K by 12 into tau into F VDD minus. So basically the short circuit power dissipation is dependent upon the input frequency of the signal. It is proportional to that. So this is also a very big consideration to be taken. If high frequency signal will be chosen, then obviously the short circuit power dissipation will be more. And this is a complete formula for a short circuit power dissipation. So in this way, we have a total power dissipation in a CMOS circuits given as static power dissipation plus dynamic power dissipation plus short circuit power dissipation. These are the three components which contribute to the power dissipation in a CMOS circuits.